This is my video update from Belgrade, Serbia on this October 13th, Friday morning. Let's talk about some news. So yesterday in my video, I got the days of the week mixed up. It was Thursday and I said Tuesday, October 12th. So I apologize for that. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes I mix up Tuesday and Thursday. Actually, it happens quite often. Anyway, let's talk about what is going on in the world today. And Secretary of Defense for the United States, Mr. Lloyd Austin, he arrived in Israel to show the U.S.'s support for Israel and to discuss the next steps in what looks like is going to be a massive ground operation in the north of Gaza. Israel, they officially informed the UN yesterday to evacuate its staff and advised civilians to evacuate to the southern part of Gaza. The northern Gaza Strip must be evacuated within 24 hours. That is the statement from Israel to the United Nations. The source for this quote is the UN itself. There are over 1 million citizens in the north of Gaza. The request to evacuate is likely due to an imminent ground operation by the Israeli army. So it looks like we are going to get a massive escalation, which is about to take place. How all of this is going to work, I have no idea. 1 million plus people in the north of Gaza are now being told within 24 hours to evacuate to the south of Gaza. Meanwhile, all of Gaza is being cut off from food, water, electricity. There are reports that the hospitals are about to collapse because they can't get any medicine. They don't have water, electricity. How are they going to operate? So, I mean, we're looking at just a horrible catastrophe, a horrible humanitarian crisis that is about to unfold in the next 24 hours, probably less than 24 hours now. Israel said in the statement to the United Nations that this is about crushing Hamas. So this is where we are. And Lloyd Austin, he arrived in Israel to discuss the next steps. Anthony Blinken was in Israel yesterday. EU Chief Ursula von der Crazy, she's going to be arriving in Israel soon, as is the Foreign Minister of Germany, Annalena 360, the Foreign Minister of Canada, the Foreign Minister of Italy, and some more EU officials. They are all expected to arrive in Kiev to virtue signal most of these people. I mean, let's be honest, let's be real. Annalena going to Israel is not about looking for any type of solution or negotiation or diplomacy or anything like that. I mean, Annalena can barely tie her shoelaces. She doesn't know how many days there are in a year. She's very bad at mathematics. So, I mean, her going to Israel, sending someone like Annalena to Israel is all about coming out with more statements about escalation. Annalena's going to talk about escalation, and she's pretty much there to basically show the EU support for what is shaping up to be a very devastating and possibly a very long conflict, a long war and operation towards Gaza. So this is not about serious diplomacy. This is not about trying to find an off-ramp. When you send Ursula and Annalena and these people, you know this is not a serious effort for peace. It's the exact opposite of that. If you want peace, if you want to find a solution to what is taking place, then you have to send in the professional diplomats. That's not Blinken. That's not Annalena. That's not the foreign minister of Canada, Melanie Joly. It's none of these people. If you want to find a solution to this conflict, the answer lies with BRICS. Send in the professionals. Lavrov, Wang Yi, Jaishankar, all of these people. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Send in the professional diplomats. They'll get to a solution. They will find a solution. Sending in Annalena and Ursula, it's all about escalation. It's all about more war. That's what you're going to get with their arrival to Israel. So, yeah, this conflict, I don't like to compare the conflict in Ukraine with the war in Israel, Gaza, because I think there are two very different situations, very different conflicts and wars. But there are some similarities. I can think of a couple right now. The first similarity is that you're seeing all the same collective West leaders like we saw in Kiev. You're seeing all of these people now arrive in Israel. And once again, these people are arriving in Israel not to find a solution. They're arriving in Israel to come out with statements about escalation, to, in some cases, like Annalena's case, I mean, she's probably going there to virtue signal, as is Ursula. You're dealing with people that are just, I mean, Annalena, really? Really? You're sending her to Israel to do what exactly? What is she going to accomplish? Anyway, you saw the same thing in Ukraine, where they all just flew to Kiev in order to make an appearance there and to come out with some statement which talks about escalation and more conflict. So you're seeing this happen now in Israel. Another similarity is that this conflict, this war in Israel, like the conflict in Ukraine, can be stopped. We can stop this operation into Gaza if you allow BRICS, with the UN and the UN resolution, if you allow BRICS to mediate. The US has tried to mediate. This is Lavrov's point and Putin's point. The US has been trying, if you want to use that word, to find peace in the Middle East, to find a solution to this conflict for 70 plus years. And they failed. The US has failed. They haven't been able to find a solution. It's time to, and a solution exists, approved by the United Nations. And so if you want to find a solution and come to a peace, I believe that BRICS could possibly provide the solution. If it's not working with the US mediating, maybe it's time to change things up and put the mediation into the hands of more capable diplomats and more capable diplomacy. Once again, based on UN resolutions. So this conflict can be prevented. This escalation can be prevented. The solution is there. It's there. But unfortunately, it's not going to happen. Just like it was in Ukraine. The solution was there. It was in Minsk 1. It was in Minsk 2. It was in getting Ukraine to say that they're not going to enter NATO. The solution was there. And the solution was actually presented in Ukraine during the first month of the conflict, during the first month of the special military operation, where the Zelensky regime signed a document to end hostilities. And in that document, they said that they would not enter NATO. This was in Turkey. And Putin had that document and it was signed. But what happened? Boris Johnson flew to Kiev and he told Zelensky to tear up that agreement. So, I mean, we had a solution in Ukraine as well. That was the purpose of the first month of the special military operation. There was never one Russian official, not one Russian official who said that the goal of the special military operation was to capture Ukraine in 3 days. That was Milley who said that. Milley said that, and then the entire Western media, they picked up on Milley's statement and they amplified it. And now it's become some sort of historical fact, but it's fake news. That is fake news. We know that. It's fake news. Never has Russia ever once put a timeline or a date on the special military operation. Never once. But it's my opinion, it's my analysis, and many people's analysis that have followed the conflict in Ukraine, that the purpose of the first month of the SMO with regards to the operations that took place in and around Kiev was to force Zelensky to sign a ceasefire, to sit at the negotiating table and sign a ceasefire where Ukraine states that they will not enter NATO. That was the purpose of it all. And when Boris Johnson blew the whole thing up, well, Russia went to plan B. They went to plan B, which is what we're seeing play out now. Plan B, plan C, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, Israel, this operation into Gaza can be stopped. It can be prevented, but we have to get it into the hands of capable diplomats, professional diplomats. And that's not going to happen. That is not going to happen at all. And another similarity is how the media is treating this conflict and how the media has treated the conflict in Ukraine, in that they forget all of the history. History is never discussed. Everything seems to have started on day zero. You know, there was an attack, and that's when everything started. No one ever talks about the history of these conflicts. In the case of Ukraine, everything started on February 22nd, 2022. 2022. And that's when it all started. No one talks about Minsk 1, Minsk 2, the Maidan coup, the overthrow of the democratically elected government. All of that stuff is forgotten. But Poroshenko's war with Donbass, the death of thousands and thousands of Russians now, but Russian speakers back then, Russian-speaking Ukrainians back then in Donetsk and Lugansk. Now they are Russian citizens. No one talks about the 9 years of attacks in Donbass. No one talks about Odessa and the trade unions fire, which killed 52 people, 54 people, I'm not sure, a horrific event. Everything started on February 22nd. No one talks about the context. And I say this because I was watching a video yesterday where a reporter at the EU headquarters, a reporter asked one of these EU technocrats, one of these talking heads in Brussels, asked him about the comparison between Russia and Israel and why the European Union supports Israel's attack on Gaza, and why the European Union did not support Russia's attack on Ukraine. That was his question. I'm paraphrasing it, but that was pretty much what he asked the EU official. And the EU official was like, well, Israel's attack is justified because it was provoked, while Russia's attack was unprovoked. So that's why the EU is taking two different positions. Basically, the EU saying that they're not being hypocrites, but they are being hypocrites, because what the EU official isn't telling you, and what the reporter failed to follow up, the reporter should have asked a follow-up question, is what about the history? For example, what about the history of Ukraine? How can you say this was unprovoked when we have an entire history that predates the coup, going all the way to the Maidan coup, which was a government overthrown by the Obama-Biden White House and the European Union? You forget about that. You forget about Odessa trade unions. You forget about Poroshenko launching the war against Donbass, which was sanctioned by Biden. Back then, Biden was vice president, and he pushed Poroshenko to attack Donbass. You forget about all of that stuff. You forget about Putin's warnings. Putin was constantly warning. He was begging the collective West, we have to find a new security architecture. Please don't allow don't allow Ukraine into NATO. Putin was begging the collective West, please don't do it. Don't force my hand. And what happened? Zelensky went to the Munich Security Conference 2 weeks before the special military operation, and Zelensky was running around the Munich Security Conference with Kamala in attendance, and Ursula, and Schultz, and Annalena 560, they were all there, and they were all talking about how Ukraine is not only going to enter NATO, but Ukraine's also going to get nuclear weapons, and they were all happy about it. So, I mean, you forget about all the context and all the history, and the Brussels official says that Russia's war was not provoked by friend the tree. So, two very, very different conflicts and wars with two very, very different histories, but there are some similarities. And the main point that I want to get across in this video is that, God, please, the war, the conflict in Israel, and this attack on Gaza, this can be stopped. This can be stopped. But not with these diplomats, not with these people traveling to Israel. They're not going to stop it. They're going to escalate it. And Blinken, when he was in, let me get the quote, when he was in Israel the other day, just to give you an example of how what they're doing is just escalation. They're not engaged in diplomacy. They're engaged in escalation. Blinken, when he was in Israel, he said the Hamas attack on Israel is like 10 9/11s, and Israel is obliged to respond forcefully to such an assault. Israel is obliged to respond forcefully to such an assault. It's like 10 9/11s. We all know what happened after 9/11. 2 decades of nonstop war, Iraq, Afghanistan, the war on terror, censorship, the Patriot Act that was passed in the United States, surveillance, Snowden, Assange. I mean, we all know what happened after 9/11 and after the war on terror was launched by Bush Jr. And now you have Blinken saying this is like 10 9/11s, and you have many collectivist officials claiming that this is another Pearl Harbor moment, and we all know what happened after Pearl Harbor. So these people are not engaged in diplomacy and in trying to find a solution to this conflict so that thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people don't die. They're doing the exact opposite. So that's what Blinken said just the other day when he was in Israel. Anyway, let's talk now about Ukraine for a bit. We have news that the frozen assets, the frozen funds of the Russian central bank, of the Russian government, that these frozen assets, the profits of these frozen assets are now going to be dispersed to the Zelensky regime. Zelensky, when he was in Brussels, he met with the Belgium Prime Minister, and Belgium said that they are ready to send 1.7 billion euros from frozen Russian assets to Ukraine. And Belgium has created a special fund to support Ukraine in the amount of 1.7 billion euros, which is filled from taxation of Russian assets frozen in the country. Now, it's believed that there's about $212 billion in Russian frozen assets, of which a clearinghouse in Belgium is making a profit off of from the interest of these assets. So what they're going to give to Ukraine, just to be clear, let me find the numbers here because I've bookmarked the numbers of how this is all broken down. What's going to be given to Ukraine is not actually the 212 billion. I don't even know if they have a handle as to where all this 212 billion is located. I'm not quite sure, to be honest. I don't know how this works. But this clearinghouse, I don't know how they're doing it, but they are accruing interest and profit from these frozen assets, and they're going to give over that profit to to Ukraine. And I believe the total amount is 3 billion, and Belgium is going to start with 1.7 billion to go right away to the Zelensky regime. Let me find you the breakdown here. In July, a major EU clearinghouse, Belgium-based Euroclear, revealed that of the 2.28 billion it earned in the first half of 2023, it accrued more than 1.7 billion in profit from Russian frozen assets. In financial results from the first 6 months of this year, Euroclear reported a substantial growth in operating income, driven partly by higher interest earnings, including a material rise linked to the application of international sanctions on Russia. Euroclear's income, excluding Russian assets, amounted to 538 million. It is estimated that Euroclear holds 196.6 billion worth of Russian assets, the vast majority of which is owned by the country's central bank. The EU has frozen 207 billion in Russian assets and reserves since the beginning of Moscow's military operation in Ukraine. So basically, they hold 196 billion in Russian central bank assets frozen. They're accruing interest on this clearinghouse accrues interest on these assets, which they declare as profits. If they didn't have these assets, their profits would only be 538 billion. But these Russian frozen assets, which are accruing interests, add an additional 1.7 billion in profit to this Belgium-based clearinghouse. And now it looks like the Belgian government is going to take this 1.7 billion of profit from this clearinghouse, and they're going to hand it over to the Zelensky regime. That is what is going on here. And the total amount, I guess, over the past year and a half, 2 years of the freeze of these Russian assets is, what did they say? 3 billion is the total. So yeah, that is the EU are expected to create some 3 billion in windfall profits. Okay. So the total that the EU is expecting from all of this windfall profits is 3 billion. So they've given 1.7, which is what they've accrued over the last 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years. And they're expecting 3 billion to be the total windfall. All right. So that's the EU trying to buy time for the Zelensky regime because, well, we know the situation with the United States. Money and weapons right now from the United States, they're earmarked for Israel. And the EU is in a panic. Zelensky traveled to Brussels because he's in a panic. He met with Stoltenberg. I'm sure he met with Ursula. He met with the government officials in Belgium. And they came up with 1.7 billion of this clearinghouse, these profits from frozen assets. Now, keep in mind that there are a ton of lawyers and a ton of financial experts who are warning the European Union not to hand over this interest, this profit, because this is going to damage the EU as an investment center, as an investment region in the future. In other words, countries, oligarchs, they're not going to want to invest in the EU, and that they're not going to want to park their money in the European Union out of fear that what they're doing to Russia is what they're going to eventually do to them. So this is going to damage the EU in a big way. Stick a fork in the European Union, it's cooked. It is cooked. Just like they should have never banned Russia from SWIFT, from the SWIFT system. And all of Wall Street, they warned the Biden White House, don't ban Russia from SWIFT. If you do that, you're going to have competitors pop up. We're going to lose our ability to track the movement of money. They warned the Biden White House it's going to do irreparable damage to the United States. But the Biden White House did it. And so you have the same situation now with these profits from the Russian frozen assets. They're getting the warnings. Don't do it, but no reverse gear. No reverse gear. And so they're going to do it, and this is going to damage the European Union. Janet Yellen, she's all for this. She came out with a statement and said that she fully supports Europe in taking the proceeds from frozen Russian assets to fund more aid for Ukraine. Well, of course, the United States is for this. This is obvious. The U.S. is saying, yeah, destroy your credibility as the European Union because people are going to park their money now more with the United States. It's like the U.S. is removing a competitor, an investment competitor, a financial competitor. So yeah, of course, Yellen is egging the European Union on. Yeah, do it, do it, do it. Take the profits from the frozen assets, give them to the Zelensky regime. Do it, do it, and the U.S. benefits from this. I'm telling you, man, I am telling you, these EU leaders, they are not looking out for the best interest of the European Union. That's for sure. That is for sure. And of course, a lot of this money, the Belgium Prime Minister said this money is going to be used for purchasing of weapons and for humanitarian aid and stuff like that. But purchasing of weapons, it's like saying we're going to destroy our economies in the European Union. We're going to destroy our credibility. And we're going to do that so that we can give the military-industrial complex more weapons contracts. That's basically it. Anyway, let's see here. We had, by the way, speaking about stealing money or making bad financial decisions, we have word from ABC News that the U.S. and Qatar have agreed to prevent the dispersal of recently unfrozen Iranian funds as Israel-Hamas war rages. The U.S. and Qatar have reached an agreement that the Qataris will not act on any request from Tehran for the time being to access $6 billion in Iranian funds that were unblocked as part of a prisoner swap last month. So once again, the collective West is breaking an agreement, and they're going to steal the $6 billion, right? They're going to steal the $6 billion. It's not their $6 billion. This is Iran's money. Everyone recognizes this. It's Iran's money. And they were going to give it to Iran. But as the money is sitting in a bank in Qatar, this conflict breaks out, this war breaks out, and you have all kinds of people in the collective West saying, this was the narrative. This was the narrative a week ago as the war started. As Hamas attacked Israel, the narrative was that Iran was behind this, and Iran used the $6 billion that the Biden White House gave over to Iran in exchange for prisoners. They used that money to buy Hamas weapons. That was the narrative. And now it came out that Iran is not behind Hamas. They had no idea what was going on. Even the New York Times, in an article they put out yesterday, they said that Iran was surprised at what Hamas had done. They were taken by surprise. That's the New York Times that said that. Not me, not Alex. The New York Times said that Iran was surprised by the Hamas attack. So it's now pretty much accepted that Iran was not behind any of this. But they're still going to take the $6 billion. They're going to take the $6 billion back, which is not theirs. They're taking back money that was stolen from Iran. Iran has given over the prisoners. Iran agreed. Iran fulfilled their side of the agreement, but the collective West is not going to fulfill their side of the agreement. And that money is now going to stay in Qatar, and eventually it will come back to the United States, or what I think is probably more likely is that the $6 billion will be conveniently forgotten about, like say in a year or 2 or 3 years, it'll be forgotten about, and it'll be distributed to various individuals and organizations, politicians. I don't know. That would be my guess as to what's going to happen. So yeah. And like I said, the narrative that this money was used by Iran to fund Hamas it can't be correct. Doesn't make sense, because it's now acknowledged that Iran was not behind this Hamas attack, and And anyway, the money was sitting in a bank. So how could Iran have used that money to fund Hamas anyway, when we now know that that money is in the bank in Qatar and was never given over fully to Iran? So how could have that money been used to fund Hamas? So anyway, all right. Let's see here. What was I going to talk about before I went into this story? Budanov, the AI android intel chief of Ukraine, Budanov, he said that in an interview that the big counteroffensive has failed. This is what Budanov admitted to yesterday in an interview. And he basically said that, I'm looking for the quote here if I have it bookmarked. Budanov basically said that the super duper counteroffensive, it just didn't meet its planned timeline. It didn't go as planned. Budanov told Ukrainskaya Pravda that, what did he tell them? He said that the Ukrainian armed forces are not just behind schedule, but have completely fallen out of it. That's a direct quote. After several things did not go as smoothly as Kiev had hoped. Budanov refused to explain what falling out of schedule actually meant, stating that everyone should draw their own conclusions. Check this out. Budanov, this is an interesting statement from this interview. Budanov said that the supply of arms and other aid to the Ukrainian army could potentially be hampered by a protracted conflict in the Middle East, referring to the recent escalation between Israel and Hamas fighters in Gaza. Quote, if that conflict is limited in time to a few weeks, then in principle there is nothing to worry about, Budanov said. However, if the situation drags on, it is quite clear that there will be some problems with the fact that it will be necessary to supply weapons and ammunition not only to Ukraine, the spy chief added, noting that the world is approaching global war pretty quickly. You know, if there's one time that I have agreed with Budanov, this is it. I said the same thing a couple of days ago. I think Budanov is watching my channel. Budanov, are you watching my channel? Stop watching my channel, man. Anyway, or drop a like. Budanov, if you like this video, subscribe. Click the notification bell to make sure that you receive updates whenever I post a new video. And please drop me a like. Go to the Duran shop, Budanov, 20% off. Use the code, the Duran20. I said the same thing 2 days ago. I think I even said it yesterday in my video that if the war in Israel and in Gaza is a short conflict, then a short war, then I can see the collective West shifting back to Ukraine. But if this is a long war, and it looks like this is going to be a long war and a long operation, then Ukraine is going to be in big trouble. That is what Budanov is saying. But Budanov has also said that the big super duper counteroffensive has failed. It's failed. So here you have Budanov, who's been the biggest supporter of the big super duper counteroffensive. Remember, Budanov said that he's going to be swimming and fishing in Crimea this summer. That's what he said. Now you have him saying that this has been a bust. It's been a failure. That's Budanov. So Budanov is speaking a lot of truths over the past couple of days. He revealed that Ukraine attacked the ZNPP 3 times. It wasn't Russia, it was Ukraine. Now he's admitting that the super duper counteroffensive has failed. I wonder why Budanov is starting to reveal all these truths. I wonder if he's thinking about cutting and running. I don't know. I don't know what Budanov is up to. Anyway, let's wrap up this video. Yeah, I need to wrap this thing up. Let's see here. Should we go straight into a clown world? Steve Scalise, by the way, he's dropping out of the race for House Speaker, even though the Republican establishment preferred Scalise. It looks like he won't get the votes that are needed to be House Speaker, and it looks like we will get Jim Jordan. I think Jim Jordan will get, I think he needs 217 votes. I think he will get those votes. Jim Jordan is the Freedom Caucus Republican who is against funding for Ukraine, and he is supported by Trump endorsed by Trump. So this is bad news, actually, for the Zelensky regime. It was good news if Steve Scalise was going to be the House Speaker, because Steve Scalise is all for war. He loves war. But now it looks like you're going to get Jim Jordan. That's not good for Ukraine, because Jim Jordan does not want money and weapons going to Ukraine. So that's a setback, another setback for the Zelensky regime. And finally, we had a report from the U.S. government for Congress, which said that the U.S. must be ready for simultaneous wars with China and Russia. They have to prepare for simultaneous wars. So they have to up their production of nuclear weapons. They have to up their spending on the military-industrial complex. How much higher can it get? I have no idea. It's almost at $1 trillion now. What are they suggesting? $2 trillion? $3 trillion? I don't know. Keep the money printing. The money printer goes brr. You know, I mean, how much more money can they spend on the MIC? Anyway, that's the report. That's the conclusion that they came up with, is that the U.S. should be ready to fight on two fronts, Russia and China. Before the U.S. doctrine, before this report came out, the U.S. doctrine was that the U.S. should fight one of these superpowers, one of these competitors, Russia, defeat Russia and then fight China, or vice versa. That was the doctrine. Don't take on both at the same time. But now we've had a shift, a change. Now it's take on both at the same time. It's not going to end well for the U.S. if that is the new doctrine. So let's do some clown worlds, huh? First clown world. I don't know if this is a clown world. The EU gives Zuckerberg 24 hours to address disinformation concerns. Commissioner Terry Breton has warned Meta about the alleged spread of fake news at the threat of fines. So just like the EU threatened Twitter the other day, threatened Elon Musk, it looks like they're now threatening Facebook. I don't understand why they have to threaten Facebook. Facebook is pretty much the CIA. It's like the EU is telling the CIA to censor content. It doesn't make any sense. Maybe this is just procedural. I don't think the EU has anything to worry about with Facebook when it comes to censorship. Facebook will not only play along with censorship, they'll outdo the European Union's Digital Services Act. I mean, they're going to one up the European Union when it comes to censorship. So I don't know why they warned Facebook there. We also have not a clown world, maybe a pre-clown world. The IOC suspends Russian Olympic Committee. Moscow has slammed the decision, calling it double standards and segregation. Whatever. The IOC is basically saying that the Russian Olympic Committee is now banned because the Russian Olympic Committee, they included Zaporozhye, Kherson, Lugansk, and Donetsk as part of the Russian Federation, and the IOC said that they're not going to allow this, and so they suspended the Russian Olympic Committee. Who cares about the Olympics? We're going to have the Olympics next year in Paris, and no one is even talking about it, the Summer Games. Is anyone talking about it? No. No one even cares anymore. I'm calling it, man. The Olympics, stick a fork in them. It's done. We need a new international sporting event. And I'm saying that as a Greek. I'm saying that as a Greek. The Olympics are over. No one cares anymore. And we have Guy Verhofstadt. Now we're entering clown world territory. He put out this tweet. While Parliament and Council discuss geopolitical threats to Europe, Orban's off to China to meet with Putin. When does populism become treason? When will the EU hashtag EU finally follow up Article 7 and ban Orban from EU decision making? Hashtag ban Orban. Because Orban is going for the One Belt and Road Summit, which is taking place in China. Orban's going to be the only collective West leader to attend this event. And Putin's going to also be there. And so they might talk. Oh, no, they might talk and meet. God forbid. God forbid you have a leader of one country meeting and talking with the leader of another country, and possibly they can discuss negotiations, ceasefire, peace, cooperation. God forbid. God forbid that happens. And so Guy Verhofstadt, he's all pissed off about this. Anyway, yeah, they want Hungary out, or actually they want Hungary to remain in the European Union, but they want Hungary inside the European Union without any of the rights of a full EU member. That's what they want. So they can continue to, so they can make an example of Hungary. They want to keep Hungary in, but they want to abuse Hungary. Anyway, in a final clown world, let me show you this beautiful fountain at this beautiful park. And a final clown world is coming from the hill. And this should come as no surprise to anybody that there are neocons and media in the collective West that are blaming Russia for the war that is taking place in Israel and in Gaza. This is coming from the Hill. Putin's fingerprints are all over the Hamas attacks. Yeah, Putin's fault. It's all Putin's fault. And basically they're saying that a second front has opened up. And this second front is in Putin's benefit. That's what they're basically saying. So Putin must have engineered this, right? They can't accept any responsibility or accountability. It's all Putin's fault. Anyway, I don't think this should be a surprise to anybody, even though the Israeli ambassador in Moscow, he came out with a statement yesterday and he said that Russia has absolutely nothing to do with this. Russia can deliver a solution. Russia can mediate and provide a solution. That's without a doubt. Lavrov can do it. Lavrov is the exact diplomat we need at this moment in time to sit down with both parties. Russia has an excellent relationship with the Arab world, with the Palestinians, and with Israel. Russia has an excellent relationship with all parties involved. They have the professional diplomats, BRICS as well, excellent relationship with China, Brazil, India. They can sit down and they can come up, South Africa, they can come up with a solution to this. And they have the professional diplomats who know how to do this. They did it with Iran and Saudi Arabia. No one ever thought that would happen. But nope, they're going to say that Putin's behind this war. Even though the Israeli ambassador in Moscow said Russia has nothing to do with this. Zero, zilch, nada. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. Coming to you from Belgrade, Serbia, the Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter, X, and go to the Duran shop. I already said this when I was promoting my stuff to Budanov. Anyway, take care, everybody.